Okay, I did it again. I started with my mic mute. I apologize. I did it again. Okay, so this morning we are going to be talking about the continuation of this week's topic, which is how do you know if you are helping your adult child or are you making things worse? And specifically today, we are going to talk about the rescue, reset, and repeat cycle. So give me a moment. I'm going to get everything else turned on, and I will be right back. Okay, welcome back. I am so happy you are here. My name is Jonathan. I am a family therapist, and I am the one who is leading these talks, and also on the Facebook page, the Facebook group, Parents of Adult Children Failure to Launch, and then the YouTube channel, which is under my name, Jonathan Lake Family Therapist. And today we are talking about how do you know if you are helping your adult child or are you doing something that is actually hurting the situation, helping or hurting, right? That's been the topic of this week. And today we're specifically talking about a pattern that fits very well in this, which is called the rescue, reset, repeat cycle. And I want to talk to you about what that means, right? And just by the way, get on the email list. I send out emails every week, and there are some tools that as soon as you sign up on that email list, you will receive those tools and several emails that come your way immediately that start telling you about how to help get your adult child unstuck, get them motivated, get things moving forward, how to reclaim your own life back as parents, and a lot of tools, a lot of resources. And that's also where we make announcements about any of the trainings, workshops, and things like that, resources that are offered. And that Facebook private community is just a wonderful community to be a part of. All right, so let's talk about this pattern, this rescue, reset, and repeat cycle. Some heavy R's there. All right, so it's basically like this. Things seem okay. You step back. Something goes wrong, you jump back in, things improve. You step back, it happens again. Does that sound familiar? Right? So things seem to be okay with your adult child, right? So naturally, things are going well. They're an adult. You step back. You believe everything is fine. And then they lose their job. And then they stop going to class. Then they don't pay for something. They stop following through, basically, and suddenly you're back in crisis mode, right? And so naturally, it's a crisis, right? Something's not going well right with your kid, so you jump back in, right? You motivate them, you encourage them, you remind them, you make some calls, maybe you give them some money, you help them put a plan together again, and it works, right? They're moving again. So everybody feels better. Then you step back, right? And then about 3 weeks, 3 months, something like that, you're right back where you started. I can't tell you how many times parents have told me a version of that pattern, right? And it's maddening. It's exhausting. I mean, I hear it from parents. I hear it from all the parents in the group. They're beyond frustrated. They are beyond exhausted. They're at their wits' end because these patterns keep happening over and over. Well, I want to make some points, right? I want to cover some points, and then I'm really curious about your questions, right? Your thoughts on this. So my first point is look for the patterns, not just the crisis. You know, a lot of times parents get focused on when's the next crisis going to happen, right? They're looking out for that. When are things going to go badly? And that's also the thing that gets their attention, right? They focus on fixing the crisis instead of looking at the bigger pattern, right? So, instead of looking at like, oh, he just lost his job, we need to get him another job. Maybe losing the job isn't actually the main problem. Maybe the bigger problem is every time something falls apart, mom or dad become the engine that gets things moving again. Right now, and I'm not saying parents are bad for jumping in and fixing things, but do you see the pattern? Right? The ones who are keeping it going, the engine is mom, dad, grandma, whoever else keeps jumping in. Right? And when everything gets moving again, everybody assumes that the problem has been solved, but it hasn't. So here's a question for you. Do you recognize this pattern? Right? Things fall apart, you jump back in, things improve, and then a few weeks or a month later, you're right back where it started. Right? Pay attention to the bigger pattern. Right? And then the second point is, who is creating the momentum? Right? Whose energy is moving things forward? That is a great tool, right? That's a great diagnostic to have, right? Like, who's moving it forward? So your adult child may technically be doing things, right? They applied for a job, they made the appointment, they got back to work, and those are all good, right? That they're all good. But here's my question. Who initiated it? Who reminded them? Who kept checking, right? Who made the plan? Who kept them motivated? Who made sure each and every step happened? If the answer to that is consistently you, the parent, then the apparent progress might be misleading, right? It's good, but it's misleading, right? I mean, they're moving, but you're providing the momentum, right? So where are we really going here? Which brings me to my third point, right? Don't confuse they're back on track with change, right? Because is it really changing, right? We're talking about a pattern. They get back on track, then they're off track, right? So don't confuse that they're back on track with change, right? The crisis is over. They get another job. They get caught up on their bill. They register for class, whatever it is. It's great. I'm seriously saying that is great. But I want you to ask, what did they learn that will make the next time different? Let me say that again. What did they learn? Keyword learn, that will make next time different. Because if nothing changed underneath the problem, there's a good chance they're going to repeat that cycle. Right? So what do they need to learn? Right? Maybe they need to learn how to manage a schedule instead of someone else managing their schedule. Maybe they learn how to tolerate frustration instead of quitting every time it gets hard. Maybe they need to learn to ask for help before things fall apart, right? Instead of parents jumping in and saying, "Oh, it's falling apart, let's do it." Maybe they need to learn how to ask for help. Maybe they need to learn how to create their own plan and follow through, right? It's like, what are they learning? That's what I see. Again, I'm not blaming, I'm helping you learn. I'm helping parents learn, helping parents understand, because that's a lot of what I see. Right? The kids aren't learning through the process. The adult children aren't learning through the process because the parents have unknowingly removed learning out of the process. So here is a really good question for you. Think about the last crisis that you helped your adult child through. What did they learn from it? And I'll tell you right now, a lot of parents will tell me this, and there's a little truth to it, right? But it's not the kind of truth we want to rest on, right? Parents will tell me, well, they learned from watching me and how I handled it, right? They learned because things fell apart and then we fixed it, and they don't want that to happen again. Yes and no, right? And that really has a lot to do with the communication. Right? When parents, here's what I'm looking for as a therapist. When I hear in the story that something fell apart and parents jumped in and they fixed it. And there wasn't much conversation, right? It was just like the parents went in, okay, here's what we're going to do. Boom, 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 boom. And then, problem solved by whatever means they did. And it got back on track. I don't see learning happening. I see a lot of young adults who will sit back and be like, okay, just take care of it. And then they, go back to what it was. What did they learn from it, right? It's that vicarious learning or observational learning isn't the strongest kind of learning we want. So that brings me to the fourth point. Help differently during the next crisis. So I'm not saying this, right? And you're not saying, well, I'm never going to help you again, right? You're asking, how can I help without taking over, right? Without taking ownership of the situation. That's what I want you thinking about as a parent. How can you help without taking over? So what that looks like is instead of creating the plan, you ask your adult child, what do you think you need to do? Right? Instead of making the call for them, you say, what do you think you need to do? Who do you think you need to contact? Right? It's a different way of thinking. You're focused on your child and them taking ownership. So reminding, that's a big one, right? Instead of reminding them tomorrow, this is really a big one, all right? You say, how are you going to make sure you remember? That seems like a small thing, but I'm telling you, that is really big. I really hone in on that when I'm observing a conversation between a parent and an adult child. They'll come up with this amazing plan, right? And I'm like, okay, this is a good plan. But they haven't accounted for the old patterns, the distractions, the things like this. And I say, okay, it's a great plan, and your kid is really motivated to do it. And I'll shift to that kid. I'll say, how are they going to remember? How are you going to remember? What are you going to do? Are you going to set an alarm? Are you going to put in a calendar? Like, seriously, you have not been remembering things. How are you going to remember the whole thing that's going to kick this plan off? That's the kind of thinking you need to be doing. How are they going to remember? How are they going to take ownership? How are they going to make this happen? And that's literally the conversation that you have with them, right? And so it's like saying, what's important enough that you want to change this, right? So you're still involved, but you're deliberately putting the thinking, the planning, the get back in action, you're putting that on them. Does that make sense? All right. Here's the fifth point I wanted to make. The goal isn't getting them back on track. I'm going to have to say that again, right? The goal isn't getting them back on track. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, right? They're off track, right? They're in a crisis. Something bad happened, and your natural inclination is, let's fix this. Let's get them back on track, right? But I want to expound on that. Yes, I want them back on track, right? I want them employed again. I want them social again. I want them, out of their room, feeling good about things, moving forward. I want that for your child. But the goal isn't just to get your child back on track. Can you guess what I'm going to say? The goal is for them to learn how to get themselves back on track. That's the difference. And that's really big because we're talking about a pattern. You're exhausted because the same thing keeps happening over and over. And a big part of it is you're a loving parent, you're a caring parent, and you've been sacrificing so much to keep your child back online and keep them moving forward. But have they learned, right? Have they learned? Are they learning how to do that for themselves? If they haven't, you're going to see a repetition. That's why it's a cycle. It's a pattern. It's going to happen again, right? So this is the really tough part because this is kind of embracing the crisis that your child has sometimes created, sometimes has not been proactive enough to avoid, maybe doesn't know how to avoid it, right? They have created this crisis, and you've got to embrace that crisis as a mechanism for motivation for them to learn. And think about this also. Being an adult doesn't mean that you will never lose a job, that you'll never miss a deadline, that you're not going to screw up on something or just get overwhelmed. That stuff happens all the time in adulthood. So they need to experience struggle and pushing through. And when parents are too much of the driver, right, they don't learn, right? And they can get dependent upon someone else coming and fixing things. Right? And I'm not going to go there really far, but I've had people ask me, like, about entitlement. That is a big part of it, right? They come to believe that other people need to be fixing things for them. Other people need to be providing things for them, right? It's something they've just kind of inherently learned. And then they get in a place where no one else is doing that for them, and they protest, right? They go into a victim role of, this should not be happening to me. This is unfair. Society is unfair. This is, why is it like this? And they stay stuck in that mindset. I see young adults all the time in that mindset, that kind of entitled victim mindset, right? Instead of a skill, and it is a skill, it is a learned skill of, okay, I screwed up. Okay, I lost my job. Okay, things aren't working out. Okay, this situation, even a heartbreak, right? That person broke up with me. What do I do next? What's next? What am I going to do? What do I control? How can I move forward? I was talking with a young man just the other night, and it was a wonderful shift. He had gone through a really heartbreaking breakup. And he said, you know what? Breakups are a part of life. They're part of being an adult. And I'm going to get through this, and I need to figure out what I need to do next. And I thought that was a wonderful thing. He hadn't figured it out yet, by the way. He's still grieving this heartache. But I heard that statement, and it made me feel so good, because he said, you know what? This is a part of life. It happens. What am I going to do next? How am I going to move forward? That gives me tremendous confidence in that young man to be able to move forward. So the next time something falls apart, before you jump in and get everything moving again, ask yourself, am I helping my adult child when I solve this problem? Or am I once again becoming the person responsible for getting their life moving? Right? Is it you? Are you the one who's doing it? And what are they learning? Right? Maybe you need to shift that a little bit. Right? Learn to support them, help them, encourage them, but whenever possible, let them provide the momentum. Right? Whose energy is moving this thing forward? Right? That's one of those phrases I want you to get in your mind. Now, what do you think? Right? How does this apply to your situation? I know this creates an instant dilemma, and I've worked with many parents, families through that. Like, okay, if we're not going to fix it, what's going to happen? In fact, I have a couple of questions. Someone asked a question, and it was like right on, because this is a question I get asked so much. Someone said, let me see here. How do I step back when I know that if I don't remind them, if I don't push them or help them make a plan, they probably won't do anything? Right? That's the dilemma right there, wrapped up. Okay. But I'm telling you, a lot of that is, and just ask yourself, how much have you been, how many times have you stepped in, you reminded them, you pushed them, you helped them make a plan and got things going, right? That's the cycle. That's the pattern. You're doing it. And if you don't do it and they haven't learned how to do it, they haven't had to do it, what's going to happen? Most of the time, they're not going to do it. it is going to be a crisis, or they're going to halfway do it, right? They're not going to put enough energy into it. They're not going to keep track of their schedule enough. They're not going to be responsible enough, and they're going to experience crisis. That's going to happen. So you gotta remove that out of the mindset. You've got yourself backed into a catch-22, a no-win situation, right? If you can't let them struggle, if you can't let something fall apart, and they don't know how to take over, right? They haven't proven they can do it. How are you going to win in that situation? Now, let me make a really big point. A lot of times, parents go to these extremes of total hands off, back off, or they're way too involved, right? They're not giving their kid enough space to make mistakes, right? Or they're stepping way too far back because they don't know how to have a conversation where their child is not thinking in a mature way, not making the best choices. They don't know how to stay in a conversation like that without taking over. So parents are like, I can't take this, right? The things they are thinking are the most stupid things I've ever heard. This plan is not going to work. I can't believe that that's how they want to approach it. And they can't stay in a place of understanding, of compassion, of remembering what it was like to not have everything figured out, right? And maybe that's how they were parented, right? They were told everything to do, or they were completely left to hang out and dry. And, they had to learn the hard way, and it felt cold and cruel, right? Maybe that's a part of their past they're reacting to. But you've got to keep the conversation going. That's how I answer that question, right? Don't stop talking. You've got to find the middle place, right? Where you're letting go of what's going to happen, or really of you making it happen, right? You're going to let your child figure it out, but you can still talk with them, right? You can still ask them how it's going, what they're thinking, if they would like some advice. If not, then, step back, and they're going to do it in a sloppy way, right? Or it might start really great and then it's going to slack off. That's a skill too. How do you keep motivated, right? How do you have endurance? How do you have resilience and grit, right? Those are things that you can still participate in. You can still be there. Keep talking, and also talk about what it's going to look like. And I'm not talking about threatening your kids. Right? I'm not talking about threatening them. Like, oh, you better do this. You lose this next job, we're going to kick you out on the streets. You're going to be homeless, and you're going to be living in a van down by the river the rest of your life. That is not what the conversation is. Right? It's ahead of time saying, hey, let's just look at this, right? If you lose your job, right, what's going to happen with your bills? What's going to happen like with your phone that you love so much, right? This precious internet that you're having, this nice apartment that you want to stay in. What's that going to look like? Right? And that's where a boundary conversation comes in. Like, look, if you lose your job, which we don't want you to, right? But if you did lose your job, we're not paying for these things again. Right? That's a conversation you have ahead of time, right? And therefore, you are not going to have that phone. You're not going to have that internet. You're not going to have that apartment. You're not going to, whatever those things are. Right? You're letting them know because you want them to think about that, right? Just like you think about things, right? You don't have to live in fear, but like, okay, well, if we want to be able to, whatever it is, take that vacation, pay those bills, keep this house, on a financial side, right? Then we better keep this going, right? You don't have to be motivated by fear, but it's a reality. A lot of times, I think parents underestimate adult children who've had things done for them, right? They're kind of used to that, or things working out. They underestimate how little they're not thinking about like all the possibilities, all the scenarios, right? And I see that, like, when you start talking about it, they're like, oh, well, I didn't think about that. Oh, I didn't realize I'd have to pay for that and that. Oh, I didn't think about utilities. I don't know. I'm on the finance stuff, but it's also like with friends, right? I know some parents have really maintained their kids' social life, right? They've planned things for them. They've coordinated things. They remind them. And they don't realize that, maybe something like, if I don't invest in this friendship, it might fade. All right. Someone might be hurt by this. There's so many different areas of life, and we want our kids to develop that skill of thinking it through, right? What are the possibilities? What are the options? What are the things that can happen? So that is what I wanted to talk about today. What do you think? Right? I would love your comments. I would love your thoughts on this. And we're going to continue this conversation tomorrow at 10:30 Eastern Time. If you can be there live. I know a lot of you are watching this after the fact. Totally fine. Replays are good. Modern technology. Don't always have to be live. I like it. But if you're here live, you can ask a question. If not, put it in the comments. I read those just like I read the other one. And I actually have a few others, but I think we're just going to cycle through the same thoughts if I get into those. So maybe I'll save those for later. Hey, thank you for joining Coffee Chat. It has been a pleasure. And quick reminder, email list, some amazing tools coming your way. If you get on that email list, it's in the description. And also the Facebook group is a great community to connect with. I would love you to get on that. That's also in the link descriptions, in the link in the descriptions. But if you want to search it in Facebook, it is Parents of Adult Children Failure to Launch and Addiction Support, because so many, more than a lot of parents realize, addiction is a big part. Addiction to internet, addiction to substances, it's all the ways that they escape their responsibility, right? They become addictive cycles. And so we do talk about addiction and how to help them get out of their own internal patterns that are holding them back. So all that is available in those groups and all that. So let me just check and see if there's any comments or questions. And if not, we're probably going to wrap up for today. And I will review the things next time. So that looks like it. Thank you for being here, and I will talk to you tomorrow, 10:30. At Coffee Chat.